Okay, namaskar. Welcome everybody, especially those, not especially, but also to those who will be watching afterwards who are not here with us today in the electronic flesh, so to say. So the topic of today's class is very exciting for me, and I hope it will be for you. I I got quite a few slides, 42 to be, no, 53. So I'll be making stops every 7 slides. I went berserk because it's a topic that is very interesting for me, and the topic is developmental psychology in yoga. So it will be a little bit dry, but I think it's very important and useful, and I'm sure you'll be able to make connections with real life, with your real life experiences in yoga. Um, how do I share my screen? How do I start a slideshow? Here it is. So yeah, it's called Developmental Psychology in Yoga. So the course is on Tantra Yoga and science to try to understand the deeper meanings of all of these things. So it will be mostly psychology, and in the end, we will try to make some connections with yoga. So this is our fifth session, and initially I was thinking to do something on other branches of psychology, like cognitive psychology and interpersonal and social. But I want to say that, well, developmental psychology is that branch that combines cognitive, that combines social and social as well, yeah, but not very much interpersonal. Interpersonal is a new branch of psychology, and I hopefully, maybe I'll propose to do it the next class. Maybe if we are okay, I can specifically prepare a presentation on cognitive psychology and interpersonal for the next class. So it's a little bit of change of plan, but we'll decide in the end. So the goals of this class or presentation is to just present relevant concepts for yoga and meditation, and develop appreciation of and connections between the practice of yoga and different branch and developmental psychology. So the method is we will just review this branch of psychology, outline relevant concepts, compare and contrast yogic principles. So developmental psychology is the branch of, so now we'll just do an overview pretty much. And I'll try to really kind of do it briefly, but it won't really, it can't be brief because this is the entire, this is a big branch of psychology, which is important. And it's all about development of human being, development of a child, of teenager, and well, a human. So very relevant, I guess, to parents, to guardians, especially to teachers and those who want to teach and understand psychology of ourselves and others and how we grow. I will do, it's all based on the book that I took a course on University of Toronto, and I will list it in the end. But overall, the goal of developmental psychology is to try to understand and promote human development, child growth. Philosophically, there are different dimensions. There are different, theories, different people who see development from different perspectives. There's no one way to see the development of a human being, of a child. Plato will have one idea, Aristotle will have another, Jean-Jacques Rousseau will have another idea. Basically, does the child develop on their own, or does the society frame them? To what extent? What is the role of biology? What is the role of genetics? What is the role of culture? What is the role of teaching, of social interactions, and so on and so forth in development of a child? So the origins of this branch of psychology, and psychology as a science is a very contested field, of course, but it was born in the mid 18th century after Industrial Revolution, when the child labor was rampant, and so lots of advocates for child health, they said, well, we have to take care of them, we have to be looking after them, and we have to pay closer attention to the way that they develop. I'm oversimplifying everything, but of course, this marks the beginning of this science. And later on in the 19th century, Darwin, Hall, and Binet, all of those were primary figures in learning how children develop. For example, Darwin was also famous for writing those biographies about children, kind of learning, marking how they progress in their development. And the applied aspect of this science, this developmental psychology, is that it uses developmental research to promote healthy development, particularly for vulnerable children and families. So it's a very non-theoretical, but quite a very practical field of psychology. Now we'll just briefly overview of child development, and I will not stop. I will just my overall thing with this presentation is just to give you inspiration that this kind of field exists, and it's worthwhile to study on your own. And it's fine. You will not be able, if this is the first time that you kind of hearing this, you should not, I mean, it's good that you remember, but it's not natural not to remember, not to understand these things. But maybe just from the first exposure, you will get uh, uh, inspired by some of these points. So some theories on child development include different theories or perspectives, right? The first one is biological. The idea that how a living organism unfolds on its own, there is a program, we are programmed, pre-designed, and the way that we grow, we just naturally learn something, learn skill. For example, walking, right? And you learn, first you lie down, then you learn to kind of sit with support, then you learn to stand up with support, then you learn to stand on your own, then you learn to walk and so forth. And actually, I'm in the middle. I missed the part where you crawl. So in other words, it's a gradual development of certain skill. The second perspective is ethological theory. It's evolutionary. Basically, we learn through adaptations to we evolve because basically life forces us to. So we have IT right now, and we are forced to incorporate it and to alter our lifestyle because it exists. The third one is psychodynamic perspective, and psychodynamic is was pioneered by those psychologists like Freud, like um, like some humanists like Erickson. So they were using patients' case histories, and they created the first academic theory and largely determined how well people resolve conflicts and face different challenges. So psychodynamic, very similar to Tantra, it means that it's the ability to face conflicts and resolve them. And the better we do that, the better we grow and develop, according to this theory. The fourth one is learning perspective, and that means that basically we learn through others by communicating with other people. And the fifth one is social cognitive theory. For example, pioneered by Bandura, who is actually alive right now still, he's very old, argues that the experience gives children a sense of self-efficacy, beliefs about their own abilities and talents. So the ability to interact socially and use their cognitive skills. Cognitive development theory by Piaget, for example. And the contextual theory, it means that culture, and the Ukrainian um, psychologist whose name was Vygotsky, very important in the field of education. Vygotsky viewed development as an apprenticeship in which children develop by working with skilled adults, including teachers and parents. So just a side note that all of these theories, they're all respected, they're all valued. There is no one theory to rule them all. They all have their place in time, and most likely, like this is just different frames to understand our development. So, and in terms of themes in developmental psychology, they study continuity of development. Basically, the child of 5-year-old, 10-year-old, 15, 20. Is it continuous or is it discontinuous? Are we like one thing at 5 years old and 20 and different than 25 or not? The second theme is impact of nature versus nurture, versus like our genetic predisposition, our biology versus how we learn, how we in what society we live, and what kind of social interactions we have. And the third one is active or passive child, or active or passive learner. Basically, how much can you do on your own because you have the free will to do so, or you kind of use your will to go ahead and use something, you use your own power, versus how much you are being framed by the environment, by parents, by your teachers, by your loved ones, and so forth. So I will not really go too much in focusing on perceptual and motor development. You can all read it on your own, but basically there is this interesting one theory, which is called intersensory redundancy theory, which kind of advocates for how holistic our development is. Basically, it means that the infant's perceptual system is particularly attuned to amodal information that is presented to multiple sensory modes. Basically, to put it simply, in other words, we learn best when we are exposed to visual medium, to auditory medium, to tactile medium. The more we kind of information comes to through different sources in our life, the better we learn according to this theory. So when it comes to complex perceptual and attentional processes development, this is a kind of branch of psychology looks at perceiving objects, attention, and deficit hyperactivity. So now I will go into complex perceptual and attentional processes. Do you have any questions or comments, like very brief, because we're short on time? Very brief. I know, Max, you will kind of go
Yeah,
very
just a
in
brief
depth.
moment. 30 seconds. It's actually really funny that you mentioned that specific theory because you can literally see it in your own life very easily. How much information you can retain from reading a book, how much you can get from a movie, how much you can get from a video, and how much you can get from a video game. And depending on how many of these sensors you can activate at the same time in your body, it's easier to process and recall vast amounts of information. But we don't really necessarily feel that way when we think about our memory, because our memory, depending on who we are, simply reprocesses this information in their own way. But it's very interesting to note that.
Yeah, that's true. And then we learn so much from the video game, and then how much we learn from life, because life is like, is if we see it as a video game, we learn the most information from it because we interact with it so much. Anyways, attention is it's going into the domain of cognitive psychology, of the mental, aspect of it. Guys, any more comments? The rest of you are okay? I know we're going here like just pillaging through a big part of science, but we'll be fine. Meditation directly, it's the art of attention focusing. It's the art of willpower, if you will. It's the art of focusing attention and withdrawing our mind from the sensory world. So attention refers to processes that allow people to control input from the environment and regulate behavior. So there are different compartments that are in charge of different attention processes. The first one is the orienting network, which is associated with selection. It determines which stimuli will be processed further and which will be ignored. So this is very key because we exercise it in meditation big time. We have to select, when I close my eyes, what I will close my mind to and what I will open my mind to, what I will do with my willpower. The alerting network keeps a child's attention, not only child, but human's attention processes prepared, ready to detect and respond to the coming stimuli. How reactive we can be, slow or reactive to some stimuli. And then the executive network is responsible for monitoring thoughts, feelings, and responses, as well as resolving conflicts that may occur. So you see, meditation is also exercising the executive network big time, because we have to create the gap between the stimuli and our reaction to that stimuli. When we sit in our meditation, especially when you get your personal lessons, you learn to withdraw from the world, from your body, from your thoughts, and just while being disassociated or abstracted away from those things, you have to monitor those things. You have to be aware of those things, and it actually promotes conflict resolution. When you're able to conscientiously deal with those things. So I will briefly touch on the ADHD because right now society, so many people have symptoms from it. Max, say you have it. A good friend of mine has it. They've learned how to control it very efficiently and use it to their advantage as much as possible. But basically relates to hyperactivity, inattention, impulsivity, not being able to focus on one thing. And the problem with this is that it leads to different problems with self-regulation, with learning, with academic performance, and therefore relationships and other important functions, depending on where you are on the spectrum. Okay, so now we are going into the theories of cognitive development, and after this section, I will open it for a little bit of questions. So cognitive development, the important theory that is worth talking about is Piaget's theory. So basic principles of his theory include: first, assimilation occurs when new experiences are readily incorporated into a child's existing theories. And accommodation occurs when a child's theories are modified based on experience. So, in other words, for example, you know some things about yoga already. So now you're just assimilating. You kind of, okay, I already know this, so I'll just put them on top. And accommodation occurs when we have to basically alter the existing theory that already kind of is there. So when something that the new information contradicts the information that was already stored in our mind, we have to change it. And this process, when for example we experience this cognitive dissonance, when there is this new idea, for example, Dada shared like very complex Sanskrit words today, for example, some of you may have not heard about, and that can create some um, disequilibrium in our mind. And what we have to do is we have to try to find equilibrate, to go through the process of equilibration, of trying to fit it in with what already exists in our mind. Basically, translate Sanskrit to English words and translate English to our common tongue, and then try to apply it to our experience. So in Piaget's theory, lastly, this concept that he introduced, it's called schemas. So cognitive development driven by equilibration results in the formation of mental structures called schemas. Basically, these are quite abstract things, but it's just basically creating beliefs or statements or kind of concepts in our more complex concepts in our mind through the experience that we get. So anyways, just going very, very briefly, there are different stages of cognitive development. The first one is sensory motor, when mostly the child learns to adapt, they explore the environment, they understand objects. It starts from 0 age, from birth until 2 years. They understand object, they start to use symbols. The pre-operational stage spans from the age of 2 to 7 and is marked by child's use of symbols to represent objects and events. And this period is marked by egocentrism. It means that the child has difficulties seeing the world from another person's viewpoint. They can only see the world through their own experience and eyes. And pre-operational child sometimes created inanimate objects with life and lifelike properties, a phenomenon known as animism. So they would say, for example, oh, this phone is alive, or this is like alive, or the tree is alive. And centration is the term for narrowly focusing on just one characteristic as opposed to seeing others. Yeah, and the concrete operational spans from the ages 7 to 11, and children begin to use mental operations to solve problems and reason. So, like mathematical, arithmetic problems, like spatial awareness and stuff like this, counting. And lastly, the last stage of development is called formal operational. In this stage, extends from roughly age 11 to adulthood, children and adolescents apply mental operations to abstract entities, and they learn to think hypothetically and reason deductively. The ability to draw appropriate conclusions from facts is known as deductive reasoning. So think about Sherlock Holmes, like kind of seeing different clues and then applying to creating like complex theories. So an example of operational stage would be more abstract thinking, like a person is able to think abstractly. For example, the child can be asked a question: if I can I break glass with a feather? And a concrete operational stage, the child will say, no, of course not, because the feather is so light and glass, no. But when the child is 11 and up, supposedly they should be thinking, oh, okay, maybe if the glass is like really almost about to fall, and if you just touch it slightly, it will fall. Or maybe if you like attach the feather to like a stone and break it with it, then it will do it. So they start thinking more creatively and out of the box, so to say, counterintuitively. So another theory of development is called cognitive development is by Vygotsky, who used to be a psychologist in the 20th century from Kiev. So his point was that firstly, it's the idea of how we learn together. Basically, we learn by being parts of a culture, by being part of a group, and learning speaking a specific language. So this concept is called intersubjectivity. So it means mutual shared understanding amongst participants in activity. So for example, those who watch meditation steps, they all know what samskara is, what karma is, for example, what kirtan is, what meditation is. But those terms are not necessarily, for example, other people know. So another important concepts that include this are zone of proximal development. So the difference, so it means that the child or the human learns when they are, when they kind of exposed to information that is slightly outside of their sphere of knowledge, but not so far. It's not something that they already know that is redundant or boring to them, nor is it very far away and inaccessible. It's somewhere here. So the teacher is able to explain it to the child in their own language. And scaffolding refers to a teaching style that matches the amount of assistance to the learner's needs. So one step at a time. So you don't want to teach, basically, it's kind of gradually teaching some skill to a person. And another behavior is a private speech. It means like when it has in inner dialogue. And then no, private speech is when speech is not directed to others, but intended to help children regulate their own behaviors. Basically, when you talk to yourself. I remember my grandmother used to talk to herself, and that felt very strange and funny, but it actually helped her do everything in an orderly way. So I think people do that. And the inner speeches means the dialogue that goes in your own mind. When you just do something, you speak to in your mind. And in meditation, we learn to be aware of this inner speech more and more. So the information processing theory is basically would be interesting to people who like computers. The metaphor is that our memory consists just like computer in those different stages. So basically, our cognition consists of mental hardware and mental software. So sensory memory is where information is held very briefly in raw analyzed form, no longer than a few seconds. So when you just receive information, and when you just receive it, you decide if that's important. Then we have to go take it further to the working memory. It's the site of ongoing cognitive activity. And the long-term memory is limitless, a big storage of memory, and that's where we have things that are very, very important for us, and we store them, and we can access it all the time. And the center executive function is that we kind of regulates it from them. So for example, most of the information that we hear, we lose it from the sensory memory because we're like, oh, it's not important, so let it be gone. When something is more or less useful, it can be useful to our experience, we store it in the working memory. And there, this is where we decide whether to kind of let it go, keep it for a while, or really store it in the long-term memory, in the hard drive, with the information that is very, very important and where it can be extracted easily. So this is like a very simple metaphor to do so. So the more children grow, in terms of the cognitive development, they learn to have better strategies for like remembering, for solving problems, for doing other things. Okay, Kamati Namaskar. And executive functioning gets better, and increased automatic processing also gets faster. So it means all the children execute more process automatically without using working memory. So for example, if they ask to get ready for bed, an older child goes for all the tasks while thinks about other things, but a younger child focuses on each task as well as what to do next. Increase speed of processing, so they just do things faster. Now, another important process that we can just touch on is called memory. So yeah, you can see which parts of brain regulate that. For example, memories are stored in frontal cortex. And basically, we learn to use different kinds of strategies to help our memorization. The first one is rehearsal, repetition. So it's a similar thing when we actually do repeat our mantras or sing a mantra, we train our memory. We learn our mind to focus on the subtle idea. We train it, we program it. And ideally, when you get established in that, you start to repeat the mantra automatically. So you learn to focus on the spiritual idea, on the supreme consciousness automatically. So that happens through repetition. But kind of the way to store mundane information, we also use organization, elaboration, chunking. So for example, to some extent, presentation or like doing it like this in a graph or table like this, it helps to store it in the mind better if you do it. Okay, so emotional development. Before we go into emotional development, do we have any questions about the previous ones? I know it's very fast and it's just the overview, but any observations or connections that you make, you can briefly share. Apart from Max, anybody else wants to say something?
I just had a question about memory. Is the location where memory is stored, is that a theory or is it a fact?
Well, that's a good question. I think, judging from this, we know more or less which kind of parts of brains are in charge of storing memories. But again, it's not that clear cut. Like neuroscience always says, oh, it used to be like this, or it used to be like that. That part is more in charge of this, that part. So the truth is, we don't really know, but scientists always hypothesize and test those things.
Actually, we do kind of know. It's just that it's currently on the edge of being proven. Specifically, in one of the classes I took recently, we covered some of the processes of electrode uh, dilations and blood flow calculations, and we know roughly where what kind of memory lies. The comprehensive part is specifically how all it interacts to create the actual experience of memory. But we do have a very good understanding where memory is.
Yeah, that's very good. But the question is like the processes where they happen. The memory is quite a complex thing. Like because when we're talking about the mental imprints, and when we go into yoga psychology, and we're talking about samskaras, according to yoga philosophy, they are stored in the unconscious mind, in atimanas koshar, which is like it's not in the physical structure. So that's where the complexity, when we kind of compare it with yoga philosophy, starts. That's the interesting and complicated thing. But we don't have to go too much details here right now because we're just focusing on developmental psychology and not cognitive psychology necessarily. These are big branches, and we cannot possibly cover them in 40 minutes, guys. So this is just an overview and to provoke your curiosity. So next one is development, emotional development. So emerging emotion, temperament, and attachment. So these things are very important for yoga because yoga is largely a character building lifestyle. It's very much virtue education, you can say, and self-regulation plays an important part in it. So I will just very like power through this. So the function of emotions, experiencing and expressing them, recognizing and using them, others, people's emotions, regulating emotions. So basic emotions are experienced by people everywhere, and each consists of three key elements. One, subjective feeling. Two, physiological change. And three, an avert behavior. So the basic ones include happiness, anger, surprise, interest, disgust, fear, irrespective of which culture you come from or country. We all have the same alphabet of emotions. So from months 18 to 24, children start to experience complex emotions such as pride in accomplishing difficult tasks. Sometimes they are known as self-conscious emotions, and these involve feelings of success that stands of or expectations are met, and feelings of failure when they are not. So recognizing and using others' emotions. Infants in unfamiliar or ambiguous environment often look at their caregiver, like mother or father, as if searching for cues to help them interpret the situation. A phenomenon known as social referencing. So sometimes, because you see, that proves that emotions are also partially big time. They are social. Okay, can I express that I'm happy or should I be self-restrained? So you can get by the way our the way that we deal with emotions, understand emotions, and show emotions depends on our caregivers. the people we grew up around, how they use it, unless we work on it and change those patterns. So these are some findings which I think are important on temperament. And just to remind ourselves, temperament is an intricate combination between nature and nurture, or means biology, and our education or social construction. So persistent children are likely to succeed in school. Well, duh, it kind of is obvious, but I mean, it's a good observation, which is proven. Another one, shy and inhibited children often have difficulty interacting with their peers and often do not cope effectively with problems. 3, anxious and fearful children are more likely to comply with parents' rules and requests, even when the parent is not present. So in other words, they internalize this role model. The 4th one is children who are frequently angry or fearful are more prone to depression. That's interesting. So how this negative effect, in other words, is connected to depression. The next one is children who are capable of greater effortful control, as 3 and 4-year-old children have higher scores on measures of working memory. And working memory, as we remember, is key in terms of determining what to do with our experiences and and how to operate with our attention processes and willpower, therefore. Children who are uninhibited and lack self-regulation are prone to alcohol, drug, and gambling-related problems as adults. So you can see self-regulation is a motif that we're going to talk about later, because it's also key in yoga and it's key in our emotional development. And attachment, I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it, but this is the theory largely by Bowlby, if I remember correctly. There are 4 major types of attachments. The first one is secure, when basically the baby may or may not cry when the mother leaves, but when she returns, the baby wants to be with her. If the baby has been crying, it stops. So secure attachment is the best kind of attachment. It means we have a strong connection, and the child the parent behaves predictably, and the child understands. Avoidant attachment is when a baby is not visibly upset when the mother leaves, and when she returns, may ignore her by looking or turning away. Avoidant attachment is it's like this. So a resistant, or in other words, ambivalent, is when the baby is upset when the mother leaves and remains upset or even angry when she returns and is difficult to console. No, I think avoidant means it's ambivalent. And the worst kind of them all, or the most difficult, is disorganized or disoriented attachment, and when this child is confused when the mother leaves and when she returns and seems not to really understand what's happening. Now, the question is, how is each attachment style formed? So, secure adults describe so basically it's on the type of parenting. It depends on the type of parenting or what kind of caregiver does to us. So if they behave predictably, if they're secure, emotionally available, that would be secure attachment. Avoidant attachment means like sometimes mother consoles the child, sometimes not. Means there is some kind of unpredictability to it. And resistant attachment is when the mother lives and remains upset or even angry when she returns and difficult to console. That would be another type of parenting that influences that. Can be largely based on the special temperament that the child has, but can also be, taught by the role model. And disorganized attachment is created by abuse, physical abuse or mental abuse from the caregiver. And when the child learns to be very unstable and not sure how to behave with a caregiver. Secure adults describe childhood experiences objectively and value the impact of their caregiver-child relationship on the development. Dismissive adults sometimes deny the value of childhood experiences and sometimes are unable to recall those experiences precisely, yet they often idealize the caregivers. The preoccupied adults describe childhood experiences emotionally and often express anger or confusion regarding relationships with their caregivers. So this is just observations. And now we'll go into the who am I or self-concept. So this is a very Okay, we were losing people continuously. Namaskar, Swasti. So the self-concept is something that we deal with when we do meditation, because we have to change our perception of who we are. Literally, Ishvara Pranidhana means to associate ourselves not with the body, mind, but with the soul, with the supreme consciousness. So, origins of self-recognition, evolving self-concept and search for identity. So usually answers to who am I reflects a person's self-concept. So if I ask you, for example, put on chat, who are you? And each person just write them down. Let's do this experiment. Just write down who you are in one word. Go ahead. And I'll continue reading at the same time. So, so apparently in the 19th century, the psychologist William James, he said that the child becomes to become aware of itself, of she exists early on. At some point, they understand that they're separate from the environment and other people. We don't need to rely solely on the mirror task to know that self-awareness emerges between 18 and 25 months of age. So the mirror task is a famous experiment when basically the child was, they used kind of a mark like they use for cats to put a dot here on a child, and they will basically find it. They will find themselves like this and kind of learn to see themselves as separate, kind of be aware of themselves. So for toddlers and preschoolers, they kind of see themselves as physical characteristics, then later on as possessions, and later as competencies. So teenager will start seeing themselves as psychological traits: smart, shy, fast, popular, or whatever. So what did you guys answer? Let's see. Love, mind. Okay, Mandovidya sees herself as mind or love. Interesting. Oh, mind is Max, right? That's what you said? Ah, okay, there you go. Okay, so who am I? Search for identity. Erik Erikson believed that adolescents struggle to achieve an identity that will allow them to participate in the adult world. To learn more about possible identities, adolescents use the hypothetical reasoning skills of the formal operational stage to experiment with different selves. So the speciality of being a teenager is self-absorption. It means egocentrism, because you're trying to assert your personality, you try to understand who you really are, and you over-focus on yourself. Many adolescents, we all do that. I'm not just saying you because it's only you, all of us. Many adolescents feel that they are actors who perform on stage, and they're constantly watched by others. They're known as imaginary audience. And also they feel that their experiences are unique and nobody goes through nobody feels how hard their life is and how unique it is. It's called personal fable. And adolescents' belief in their uniqueness contributes to the illusion of invulnerability, the belief that misfortune happens only to others. So I remember when I was a teenager and a good friend of mine passed away, how shocked all of us were, because suddenly we realized, well, life will end one day. That was a shock to a teenager. Another important dimension is self-esteem. So we learn to so self-esteem is the ability to measure to person's judgment and feeling about his or her own worth. So by 4 and 5 years, we learn to kind of develop our self-esteem. And the structure should seem familiar because it is like intelligence. We didn't talk about intelligence here, really, but we don't have to do it. I don't think it relates exactly to yoga, though. I mean, we don't have to focus on it. So there are different compartments. So the idea here is you can have a high self-esteem about your mind, your academic performance, but you can have a relatively low self-esteem about your physical performance, or your attractiveness, or your athletic performance, or social competence, physical appearance, and vice versa, right? So there are different domains of intelligence and different domains of self-esteem, and they can be altered and changed, of course, improved. And usually in the beginning, children have very unrealistically high self-esteem, and as they grow older, become teenagers, it drops because they see that other people are outperform them in different domains. And it's an interesting observation here that parents who fail to set rules are telling their children that they don't care. So here we're talking about the importance of parenting style in the kind of creation of self-esteem. So children with higher self-esteem generally have parents who have reasonable expectations for their children and are willing to discuss rules and discipline with their children. And parents who fail to set rules are in effect telling their children, well, you don't matter to me. In the same way, parents who refuse to discuss discipline with their children are saying, your opinions don't matter to me. And this is called authoritarian parenting. And it leads to poor self-regulation and poor self-esteem. Narcissistic children and adolescents have a grandiose view of themselves, and they believe to be better than others, and yet relish attention and compliments from others. And they are very much prone to aggression. The overly positive view of themselves leads them to feel entitled to be aggressive when they don't get their way or believe that they are making fun of them. And they are prone to depression when they notice that the inflated self-worth is at odds with reality. So, of course, many people, we have some characteristics of narcissism, but there is also a narcissistic personality disorder when the person consistently struggles through this. And yeah, this is very painful to understand that you are just a human being. You're prone to mistakes. And that's why in yoga there is a big emphasis on humility and how kind of there's not too much emphasis on intellectuality, because everything except spirit or consciousness is limited, and every person has their own limitations and strengths too. It doesn't mean that we have to lose self-esteem, but rather we should not too much over-focus on any domain of our excellence, so to say, because we are just endowed with a talent from Supreme Consciousness directly, and they can be withdrawn or lost or waned with time. So this study is basically on, does self-esteem, is it a cause or a consequence? Having low self-esteem is associated with many developmental problems. That's why it's an important thing to talk about it. So we must have a healthy self-esteem in order to be developing successfully. So children with low self-esteem are more likely to have problems with peers than others. They are more prone to psychological disorders such as depression. And they're more likely to be involved in bullying and aggressive behavior, and more likely to do poorly in school. So hence, it's very important to improve self-esteem. Do you have any suggestions? You can put on chat, how do you think, what are the ways to improve self-esteem? But usually, I didn't put them here, but usually it's good role modeling and finding where you excel, and then kind of using that to transfer to other domains of knowledge. Spiritually speaking, I think it's a great boost to self-esteem, because you know how when you meditate on the Supreme Consciousness, you feel that, wow, I'm one with that great entity, or I'm their son, means I am worth for something. This is my existential worth. And this is always pumps your self-esteem. Okay. Now, one of the last things that we're going to talk about. Do I have time, guys, for 10 more minutes? I know we're over time. Is that okay? We're almost done. Yeah, having a nuclear or full family helps a lot with self-esteem and other aspects. Yeah, good peers, good support, good nutrition, access to resources. Okay. Okay. Do I have 10 more minutes to finish or what? Okay. So the last things that I want to talk about are moral reasoning and behavior. So we talk about self-control, reasoning, moral issues, helping others, and aggression. So self-control is a key in yoga. It's one of the virtues, and that's what we practice exactly in meditation and our conduct. Self-control is an ability to control one's behavior and to inhibit impulsive responding to temptations. Self-control is one of the first steps towards moral behavior, because children must learn that they cannot constantly do whatever tempts them at the moment. Instead, society has rules for behavior in certain situations, and children must learn and restrain themselves. This is a very interesting topic. And basically, lots of people, as children, many of us, we don't care about what others people want. I mean, what we want, we just must achieve, right? And we know about it. We had egocentrism. So just I want something and I have to get it, and I won't take no as an answer. The problem is we live in a society, we live in a family, we live, how to say, in a community. So we have to learn to do that stuff. So it all starts at our birthday, again, with parents who actually care to explain to us, to set rules, to not just impose rules, but to create rules together, to kind of do it together. And they model self-control. Max, what does this mean? Oh, you just like, or what? Oh, 10 more minutes, you approve. Oh, or what?
It's not me. I don't know who is doing this.
Oh, it's not you. Okay, no worries. So about 2 years of age, toddlers internalize some controls imposed by others and are capable of some self-control in parents' absence. For example, the boy on the right, it's from the book. So anyways, they're just able to, for example, if there is a cookie jar, they learn not to take the cookie because they know that it's wrong. Some of them learn to do so. Some of them don't. So about age of 3, children become capable of self-regulation. They can devise ways to control their own behavior. To return to example, children might tell themselves that they really don't want to play with it. So kind of they learn to tell themselves not to do it. They kind of use inner speech, like Vygotsky was saying, to say, "Oh, I should not do it. I should not be doing this." Like Baba is saying, don't tell yourself, "I'm a sinner. I'm a bad. I don't know how to do it. I'm afraid." Don't meditate on that stuff. Meditate that Baba Nam Kevalam, and that will be better. So self-control, influences of self-control. Yeah, it promotes inductive reasoning, inducing the child to reason, to think for him or herself about situation. So kind of asking questions, being in a safe zone, talking with the child, doing something together. Research shows that children's self-control is usually lower when parents are very strict with them. Because you want to rebel, right? One dimension of temperament is effortful control, which describes the child's ability to focus attention, to ignore distraction, and to inhibit inappropriate responses. Thus, some children are simply temperamentally better suited to maintain self-control and regulate their behavior. You see, so that's mostly determined by biology as well. So some people are prone to it, some are not so prone to it. And Asian cultures stress the importance of self-regulation more. So it's cultural dimension. Some culture can say, well, just do whatever, you're my best, whatever. So usually people from the post-Soviet countries, from the Asian countries, they are like really generally, especially the Soviet people, they enforce lots of control, and that can backfire. And if you're respectfully and lovingly doing that, through this kind of parenting is called authoritative. From the word authority, means like you're loving and you're controlling. But if you are not loving and controlling, that's like you're authoritarian. You're like Stalin, and you are you will raise your children as rebels. They will rebel against you, for better or for worse. Moral reasoning. Kind of powering through with this. Moral reasoning does not mean just following rules, but it means like being able to solve moral dilemmas. So I will not focus too much on theory of Piaget. The most important is Kohlberg's theory. So the first one is initially children just kind of obey. We just believe that adults know what there's right and wrong, and we just will blindly do what they say is right for us. So the second stage, yeah, this is 2 stages of the pre-conventional stage. The second one is instrumental orientation. So we look out for our own needs, and they're nice to others because we want to get the cookie, right? Or do something that we'll get in return. A person at this stage might say that, okay, I don't want to talk too much about this example. Basically, it's that. The next level is conventional level. It's for most adolescents and adults. Moral decision making is based on social norms, what is expected by others, by the society. So adolescents and adults believe that they should act according to others' expectations, interpersonal norms. The aim is to win the approval of others by behaving as a good person would behave. And the stage 4 is social system morality. Adolescents and adults believe that social roles, expectations, and laws exist to maintain order within society and to promote the good of all people. An adolescent or adult in this stage might say, so this is the example of Heinz is basically is a moral dilemma. Moral dilemma is that basically Heinz's wife is sick with cancer, and the cure to this cancer is actually worth $50, but it is being sold by the doctor for $50,000 or something like this, like extremely high because they just kind of created it and they can charge whatever they want. But in truth, the production costs $50. So if they just kind of blindly obey the orders, they cannot even, they will just do it. But the more the moral development becomes complex, the more they will be asking themselves those difficult questions until they reach this post-conventional level. And adults, typically those older than 25, moral decisions are based on personal moral principles. So social contract orientation means that, okay, I'm going to follow the rules only as long as it benefits me. However, if the expectations of law no longer serve me and the welfare of me, then they're invalid. Then I will protest. So, for example, in this situation, an adult in this stage might reason that Heinz should steal the drug because social rules about property rights no longer benefit people's welfare, right? Because they are unjust. The law is unjust, so they will rebel. And the last one, universal ethical principles, means that people will follow abstract principles like justice, compassion, equality, or yama niyamas, because now they're able to kind of listen to their soul, to their conscience more. And at this stage, an adult at this stage might argue that Heinz should steal the drug because life is paramount and preserving life makes precedence over all other rights. So we're not going to talk about aggression, but I really want to talk about prosocial behavior. Prosocial behavior means like altruistic behavior. And we develop it at the age of 18 months of age. When toddlers and preschoolers see other people who obviously hurt or upset, they appear concerned. Their sympathetic nervous system is activated, which is commonly a byproduct of experiencing distressing or threatening events. Even in some experiments, primates or monkeys do that. They just altruistically help. If you drop something like by accident, like a phone, they will raise it and give it to you. During the toddler and preschooler years, children gradually begin to understand others' needs and learn more appropriate altruistic responses. So the skills that develop prosocial behavior are perspective taking or breaking through this shell of egoism, just learning to see through other people's eyes. And the next one, the ability to experience another person's emotions. It's called empathy. And there are two aspects of empathy. One is cognitive empathy, the ability to understand another's emotions. And affective empathy, the ability to really feel the other person's emotion. These are very interesting distinctions. So all of these lead to development. So arguably, people like psychopaths, some people for developmental reasons or for some very difficult upbringing or educational experiences, they literally cannot understand to see life for the other people. They cannot do it. And they cannot completely have or feel any empathy. They can do, some of them can do, they can do cognitive empathy. They can try to understand what other people are thinking, but they cannot feel what the other person is thinking. And they genuinely do so. So this leads to antisocial type of behavior, or narcissistic disorder, personality disorder, or say histrionic largely. So people are so focused on the ego, so focused on that they are not able to break. This is disconcert. This is crazy. This is crazy, but this exists. So another skills that underline this kind of behavior is the feelings of responsibility, feelings of competence, mood, cost of altruism. So these are situational influences. So a child, for example, can see, can I really give away my time right now, or I cannot? Can I give my snack to a friend or no? Is my final snack, or the mood? Another is socializing, prosocial behavior, modeling. If parents are able to exhibit altruism and they're kind, the children naturally will learn. If they disciplinary practices, if they're taught to do so, if they're given guidelines, support, provided feedback, then they can do it. Whereas the poor parenting in the low social income in difficult economic situations, they lead to harsh threatening, include frequent physical punishment. This leads to disorganized attachment style and bad self-regulation habits. I'm not going to talk about aggression, though I think it's very, very interesting, but I will just skip it. Or what? Are you guys super interested about it? It's quite lengthy. Voice. It's 10:15, so I understand that maybe we can do it in the next class session. Right? Okay, let's do it. So this is pretty much it. Maybe let's just 1 minute to conclude. Any questions or concerns?
I don't think we can do anything with a minute, but sure.
What?
I don't think we can talk much about minute, but it was very interesting to look into it. There was a few moments where I could have interjected, but I think I'll let everyone sleep today.
Yeah, just write on our group, and I'll reply or provide information from this book.
Oh yeah, and yeah, before I forget, I asked permission to post a little document that might help, which is about memory.
Of
I'll
course,
just post it in the chat. People can read it.
of course, of course, of course. Japesh, Milena, Madhuvidi, any comments, questions? It's a lot, but I hope you can rewatch it, or I can share you the name of the book. You can read some of the parts. It's very, I think, applicable. It helps to understand. We didn't make a connection with yoga too much, though I tried to make it at some points. But you can see most of those things are very much important because yoga is about development. Because we're kind of developing, going through our chakras, and those things are important. Um, Milena, you have a question or what?
No questions, but thank you so much for sharing the information.
Okay, I have a question because we didn't focus on other aspects of that I want to talk about. We didn't focus about. We can touch more on the cognitive and interpersonal psychology more. Do I have your permission to prepare one more class for next week, or do you want to continue on to the next one? The next one we officially have scheduled on the video. Do you have a schedule to pull it up? It's art and meditation.
Yeah, I would give that next week for you because I want to read one book. I want to read and prepare.
Okay, and I also want to read about interpersonal psychology and cognitive psychology more. So it will give us more chance to plunge in. I think it's a good idea that we just focused. Developmental psychology, I think it's a must read for people who want who and for yogis it's important to know these things. Can you hear me okay? My headphones died. Yeah? No? Good. Anyways, have a good night. Thank you so much. I'll start recording now. Stop recording now.